Hello, everyone. I hope you are taking a quiet moment for yourself today. Take a slow breath and allow your mind to settle for a moment. Have you ever tried to speak English but felt like something was missing? Like you knew some words but your sentences did not flow naturally? You try to speak. You try to express your thoughts, but something feels incomplete. Your words feel disconnected. Your sentences feel unnatural, and in that moment, you may feel confused. Why is speaking so difficult? Why does it feel like I cannot express myself clearly? Many learners believe the answer is simple. They think they need more speaking practice, so they try to speak more. They try to push themselves. They try to talk faster. But even after all this effort, something still feels the same. Speaking still feels unnatural, and this creates frustration. But here is something very important to understand. Speaking is not the beginning of language. Listening is. Before you speak, you listen. Before you create sentences, you hear them. Before you express ideas, you understand them. This is the natural order of language. Listening comes first. Speaking comes after. Think about how you learned your first language. You did not start by speaking. You started by listening. You listened every day. You heard the same patterns again and again, and slowly, your brain began to understand. You began to recognize meaning. You began to feel the language. And only after that, you started to speak. Not perfectly, but naturally. This is how language learning is designed to work. Through listening first. But many learners do the opposite. They focus on speaking first. They try to create sentences without enough input. And this creates difficulty. Because speaking depends on listening. If your brain does not have enough patterns, it cannot produce natural sentences. It does not know what feels right. So it guesses. And this creates hesitation. This creates slow speech. This creates unnatural sentences. But when you listen enough, something changes. Your brain begins to store patterns. It begins to understand how sentences are formed. It begins to feel what sounds natural. And when this happens, speaking becomes easier, not because you tried harder, but because your brain became ready. Another important idea is familiarity. When you hear the same patterns many times, they become familiar. And familiarity creates speed. When something is familiar, you do not need to think too much. You simply recognize it. And recognition is faster than thinking. This is why listening is powerful. It builds familiarity. And familiarity makes speaking easier. Another key point is reducing pressure. When you focus only on speaking, you feel pressure. You feel you must perform. You feel you must be correct. But listening has no pressure. You can listen freely. You can relax. And when your mind is relaxed, learning becomes easier. This is why listening creates a strong foundation. It allows your brain to learn naturally, without stress, without pressure. Another important idea is understanding before producing. If you understand something deeply, you can use it more easily. But if you try to use something you do not fully understand, it becomes difficult. This is why listening is essential. It builds understanding, and understanding supports speaking. At this point, you may begin to see something clearly. Speaking is not the first step. It is the result of enough listening, the result of enough exposure, the result of enough familiarity. And when you change your focus, your learning begins to change. Instead of forcing yourself to speak, you begin to build your foundation. You listen more, you observe more, and slowly, something begins to grow. But there is still something important we need to understand. How do we use listening in a practical way? How do we turn it into real improvement? And this is where the story begins to go deeper. From understanding listening to using it as your main tool. Now that we understand why listening is the foundation of language, we can begin to explore how to use listening in a more effective way. The goal is not to listen more. The goal is to listen in a way that builds real understanding. The first step is to change your mindset about listening. Many learners think listening is passive. They believe it is something you do when you are not studying seriously. But listening is not passive. It is one of the most powerful ways to learn a language. When you listen, your brain is working. It is observing patterns. It is connecting sounds with meaning. And this process builds natural understanding. The second step is choosing the right level. If the content is too difficult, your brain becomes confused. You hear sounds, but they do not connect. This creates frustration. If the content is too easy, your brain does not grow. You understand everything, but you do not learn new patterns. So you need something in the middle, something you can mostly understand, but not completely. This is where learning happens. The third step is repeated listening. Listening once is not enough. You need to hear the same material many times. Each time you listen, something changes. The first time, you notice sounds. The second time, you recognize words. The third time, you understand meaning more clearly. And after many repetitions, the language begins to feel natural. The fourth step is listening with different focus. Do not listen in the same way every time. Change your focus. One time, listen for the main idea. Another time, listen for specific words. Another time, listen for sentence patterns. This keeps your brain active, and it makes repetition more effective. The fifth step is combining listening with simple speaking. After listening, try to repeat short sentences. Not perfectly, just naturally. This helps your brain connect input and output, and this connection is very important. The sixth step is using passive listening. You do not always need full concentration. You can listen while walking. You can listen while doing simple tasks. This increases your exposure, and more exposure creates familiarity. The seventh step is being patient. Listening takes time. You may not see results immediately, but learning is happening. Your brain is building patterns. It is creating connections, and over time, these changes become visible. You begin to understand faster. You begin to feel more comfortable. Another important idea is reducing pressure. When you listen, do not try to understand everything. Focus on the general meaning. Allow some parts to be unclear. This is normal. Understanding grows slowly. Another key point is consistency. Listening a little every day is more powerful than listening a lot once in a while, because the brain learns through repeated exposure. Daily listening creates familiarity, and familiarity creates natural understanding. Another important idea is trust. Trust the process. Trust your brain. It knows how to learn. You do not need to control everything. You only need to provide the right input, and your brain will do the rest. At this point, you may begin to see something clearly. Listening is not just one part of learning. It is the foundation. It supports memory. It supports thinking. It supports speaking. Everything grows from listening, but there is still one important part left. How do we continue listening in a natural and sustainable way? How do we make it part of our life? And this is where the story moves forward, from practice to natural immersion. So now we come to the final part of this story. How can you continue listening in a way that truly changes your English over time? Because understanding the importance of listening is only the beginning. The real change happens when listening becomes part of your daily life. The first step is to make listening easy to start. If something feels difficult, your brain will avoid it. So remove obstacles. Prepare your audio in advance. Keep it simple. Make it easy to press play. Because when something is easy to start, it is easier to continue. The second step is to make listening part of your routine. Do not treat it as something special. Treat it as something normal, something you do every day. You can listen while walking. You can listen while resting. You can create small listening moments in your day. This makes listening natural. The third step is to accept partial understanding. You do not need to understand everything. You only need to understand enough. Meaning grows over time. When you accept this, your mind becomes relaxed. And relaxed listening is more effective than forced listening. The fourth step is to stay with the same material longer. Do not change content too quickly. Repeat the same audio many times. This builds deep familiarity. And deep familiarity creates natural understanding. The fifth step is to trust slow progress. Listening is not fast. It takes time, but it builds strong foundations. At first, you may not notice change, but slowly something begins to shift. You understand more. You recognize patterns faster, and English begins to feel easier. The sixth step is to connect listening with your emotions. If listening feels like a task, you will stop. But if it feels meaningful, you will continue. Choose content that you enjoy. Stories, calm voices, something that feels comfortable. This makes listening something you want to do. The seventh step is to protect your listening habit. Life can be busy. There will be distractions, but even a few minutes is enough. Protect that time, because small and consistent listening creates big change over time. Another important idea is letting go of control. Many learners try to control every part of learning. They want to understand everything immediately. But learning does not work that way. It grows naturally. So instead of controlling, support the process. Give your brain input, give it time, and allow it to grow. Another key idea is patience with yourself. You are not late. You are not slow. You are learning, and learning takes time. Every time you listen, something is happening, even if you do not see it. Patterns are forming. Connections are growing, and one day something feels different. You hear a sentence and you understand it immediately. You do not translate. You simply understand. And in that moment, you realize something important. Listening has changed your English, not suddenly, but slowly, through repetition, through consistency, through patience. So if you remember one thing from this story, remember this. Listening is not just one part of learning. It is the beginning of everything. Listen often. Listen repeatedly. Allow your brain to become familiar with the language. And over time, everything else will follow. Thank you for spending this time with the story. And as always, see you in the next story.